Hi everyone, so welcome back from the break, and we're very pleased now to welcome our next keynote speaker. Kristi Holmes is the Director of the Galter Health Sciences Library and Learning Centre and Associate Professor of Preventive Medicine in the Division of Health and Biomedical Informatics at the Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Holmes works to forge strong partnerships at interfaces between technology and culture to improve access to and application of data and knowledge by all stakeholders. She's developed a robust assessment infrastructure for the campus and leads several evaluation and dissemination efforts with a keen focus on translational impact. She continues to be enthusiastic about the opportunities for the modern biomedical research library in an increasingly informatics and data-driven environment. We look forward to your talk, Translating Computable Knowledge to Meaningful Action.
So I'd like to thank the organizers for the kind invitation to join you today. And I'd also like to extend a really warm, large thanks to a long list of collaborators and colleagues whose work I will share today in my remarks. I'll be talking a little bit about moving knowledge to impact today. So let's dig in on that concept using the graphic depicted here, which displays the structural and functional relationships between data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and impact. Using this graphic as a guide, we can think of this as a bit of a journey where data are signals that are actually of no use until they're put into a usable form. Information is inferred from data in the process of answering questions such as who, what, where, and when, which thereby make data useful for decisions and for action. Knowledge is a bit more difficult to define. Knowledge is often defined in terms of information having been processed or organized or structured in some way or put into action. Wisdom itself can be understood as an appreciation of why, where insight or understanding is positioned as a discrete concept between knowledge and wisdom. And then finally, we get to the right-hand side of our graphic, which is impact, which is less reasonably defined and observable, but which importantly reflects value and speaks to the idea of benefit. Examples of this include meaningful health outcomes or community benefits, which can result from research findings. So how do we define impact? Well, there are a number of definitions of research impact. One is shown here. Research impact is the demonstrable contribution that research makes to the economy, to society, culture, national security, public policy or services, health, the environment, or quality of life, beyond contributions to academia. Impact itself is influenced by a variety of factors, such as the specific research questions that are being asked, the environments in which we're asking them, available resources, the types of outputs that are created, our community partners and the public, and the workforce, including their skills, training, and any specific roles needed on a team to accomplish the goals of the project. So we can get a better understanding of impact by asking key questions. For example, if we want to know about advancement of knowledge, we can ask questions such as, how were research output and activities actually used? How was awareness of research output demonstrated? How did this advance understanding or state of the art? If we want to understand clinical implementation, we can ask the question of, how was translation of research output and activities into clinical applications demonstrated? We can understand legislation and policy activities by asking questions such as, how did research output and activities influence or result in enactment of public law or new guidelines, standards, or policy? And then finally, we can probe economic and societal benefits by asking questions that really get to the heart of the matter, which is what economic outcomes were produced from research outputs and activities. And most importantly, how did the health of our communities improve? Researchers and librarians from Washington University and St. Louis created a new framework that public health and clinical scientists can use to better understand and measure the impact or benefits from their work. This model identifies benefits of clinical and translational research in 4 areas. First, clinical and medical benefits, where we see things like procedures, guidelines, tools, and products. Next, community and public health benefits, where we're observing things like health activities, care, and promotion. Next, economic benefits, where we see commercial products, financial savings, and other types of financial benefits. And finally, policy and legislative benefits, where we're observing activities such as advisory roles, policies, and legislation. The translational sciences benefits model is intended to provide benchmarks to assess the impact of research that applies to scientific findings to enhance their public health and well-being. This model helps to highlight the opportunities for exchange at the interface of research and decision-making to achieve research outcomes and impacts. So I think we all agree that you can do amazing research and discover amazing things, but if the research message isn't heard, that research can't make a meaningful impact. This is where the concept of knowledge exchange comes in. Knowledge exchange is a two-way exchange between researchers and research users to share ideas, research evidence, experiences, and skills. It refers to any process through which ideas and insights are shared and external perspectives and experiences are valued and incorporated. This takes planning, and the cost to foster knowledge exchange can be dramatically underappreciated and under-budgeted across all stages of a project, including specific considerations for things like context, scale, timeframes, processes, and funding or other efficiencies. The table shown on the slide here is from a terrific paper which outlines the diverse costs of knowledge exchange based on a comprehensive review of the literature as well as some case studies. Knowledge exchange doesn't just happen after a research project wraps up, as we see in the table, which outlines direct and indirect costs during various stages of the process, that is, before, during, and after the project. Based on these considerations, the authors of this study compiled guidance for researchers wishing to design and plan for knowledge exchange to support a more practical and realistic budget planning, as well as minimize associated risks. More broadly, they advocate for reforms by funders and research agencies to recognize the diversity of costs and benefits of interactive knowledge exchange. Doing knowledge exchange well takes time, energy, and money, assets that current funding mechanisms regularly do not acknowledge and provide for. This paper is a terrific reminder also of the value of looking outside one's own domain. In this case, this paper came from the ocean and coastal management literature. It's always a worthwhile use of time to explore outside of your domain regularly, and I encourage everyone to reach out to your library for support to incorporate this type of exploration into your workflow. So we saw in the first slide that the role that information plays, and that information is defined in terms of data, knowledge is defined in terms of information, and wisdom is defined in terms of knowledge. Data is critical, and particularly so in the learning health system, where biomedical research and clinical care both benefit from, as well as drive, data, information, and wisdom to impact. Organizational data capacity is increasingly regarded as necessary and a signifier of institutional and scientific success. This capacity includes technical and systems infrastructure to support work, including storage, access management, curation, analysis, and interpretation, and the tools to perform these tasks. Capacity also includes a wide range of related domains, including those shown here, which we recently identified through collaborative work on a data sharing maturity model project that is currently underway. Our research data sharing maturity model describes 5 maturity levels across the 7 domains shown here in greens and blues, outlining the specific characteristics of each. If we look along the bottom in blue, we see that the levels progress from level 1, which is characterized by ad hoc work and resource use, all the way up to level 5, which is characterized by stable and continuously improved capabilities. Maturity models are often used in healthcare informatics as roadmaps to help organizations evaluate their current capabilities and plan for further evaluation and growth across a wide range of organizational requirement areas. As the MCBK community knows, maturity models can be a powerful tool for organizations to assess their current capacity and ability to respond to new opportunities. Libraries are a critical partner node in a learning health system network and an ideal champion to empower computable biological knowledge across each of these domains. Libraries offer resources and services to address these areas. For example, the expert searching and robust evidence expertise services in libraries are often tapped to identify evidence that can support, inform, and guide governance structures and accountable leaders to guide policy, as well as the presence and clarity of routine processes and procedure. And the evidence even supports organizational culture, team science, and the institutional values about and influencing work. Digital systems and infrastructure expertise supports state-of-the-art research activities, and these information systems also serve as a scaffold for a great number of activities on campus, such as direct access to knowledge through the catalog and through the collection, through support for expertise finding and display in institutional profiling systems, and institutional repositories to support the preservation and sharing of critical research artifacts. Investment in the workforce and their development is accomplished through training and resources. This is a particular strength of libraries in the learning health system. We then move down to quality and action, which can be supported by the extensive dissemination and knowledge exchange services in libraries. These cover what may be considered traditional activities like scholarly publishing, as well as emerging opportunities for engagement and dissemination, such as preprints, data publishing, outreach, and more. Incorporation of ethics frameworks and accessibility standards ensure equitable access is yet another opportunity for library engagement, particularly in consideration of practical use and incorporation of these frameworks, such as the FAIR principles for scientific data management and stewardship, which state that research data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and the CARE principles for Indigenous data governance, which reflects key concepts such as collective benefits, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. The CARE principles are people and purpose-oriented, reflecting the crucial role of data in advancing Indigenous innovation and self-determination. Accessibility is also central to the library mission in the way that we describe and make discoverable our resources. The care that we take to be aware of and address biases in our information systems and practices, both those that were in the past as well as those that we're doing currently in our libraries. Accessibility is also advanced through the care taken with the information systems themselves to ensure that they meet accessibility standards and principles to further strengthen our commitment to foster a diverse, inclusive, and supportive research and learning environment for all. So the first project I'd like to share with you today is the NIH Comparative Genomics Resource, or CGR, from the National Library of Medicine at NCBI. This project reflects a lot of key points about computable biomedical knowledge, which everyone is familiar with. CGR is a new NIH-funded NLM initiative to maximize the contributions of eukaryotic research organisms and their associated genomic data resources to biological research. So this initiative will accomplish a number of things. First, it will use NCBI as a central repository, linking genome-related data elements common to all eukaryotic research organisms through standard data structures and interfaces. Next, it will provide researchers and educators with eukaryotic genomics resources, including new assembly, decontamination, and annotation tools to support submission of high-quality annotated genomes, integrated and expanded data and related metadata, and improved analysis tools. The CGR will ensure NCBI's data, tool, and interfaces are high value, standardized, integrated, cloud ready, and aligned with FAIR principles, enabling them to be primed to connect with the community-provided research organism resources. CGR will also amplify community-provided resources by providing an additional access point through the NCBI, resulting in a comprehensive repertoire of genomic content to support scientific discovery and increase the impact of external resources. Finally, the CGR will deliver an improved and streamlined NCBI user experience, enabling coordinated comparative genomics research efforts. So, if you are a member of a model organism community, if you're working on emerging eukaryotic research models or support eukaryotic genomic data, whether you are a researcher, an educator, a student, a scholarly society member, a librarian, a data scientist, database resource manager, a developer, an epidemiologist, or any other number of stakeholders in our progress, we encourage you to reach out and get involved. So here are a few suggestions of how you can do that. You can invite the CGR team to join you at a conference, to teach a workshop, partner on a webinar, or discuss other ideas you may have to foster innovation, sharing, and feedback. You can use and share the CGR's suite of tools and share your feedback with the team. And also, please be on the lookout for project updates and events on the CGR website, or follow @NCBI on Twitter. The project team is always excited to get feedback on CGR through listening sessions and user testing, so please reach out. Not long ago, we published a blog to introduce the CGR working group and provide an update on activities with the CGR project. I encourage you to check it out, and please contact the CGR team at cgr@nlm.nih.gov to learn all the ways that you can participate. So earlier in my comments, I mentioned that workforce development is a key strength of libraries, and that it maintains a true statement also with the National Library of Medicine. Workforce development is an opportunity for growth and investment that can increase community and capacity building in remarkable ways. As we begin to look at this in the context of the National Library of Medicine, we are immediately drawn to the terrific work happening in the network of the National Library of Medicine, or NNLM, the outreach arm of the NLM. The NNLM Training Office, or NTO, is based at the University of Utah and supports the training and educational missions of the network, and aims to deliver high quality, innovative training to diverse audiences nationwide in support of the effective use of NLM information products and services. It's also important to highlight the wonderful work happening at the National Center for Data Services at NNLM. This is a new center at NNLM, and it's based at NYU. In particular, they're providing really remarkable and wonderful support of some of the goals in the NLM strategic plan, and this work is currently underway. So first, the goal of accelerating discovery and advancing health through data-driven research, and also to build a workforce for a data-driven research and health community. So through funding, education, and outreach, the network serves as a resource for librarians, students, researchers, and any other interested individuals to learn about roles in data science and data management, as well as emerging trends in supporting biomedical research. So speaking of data, one of the most significant shifts will be happening in 2023 with the new NIH data management and sharing policy. NIH has a longstanding commitment to making the results of NIH-funded research available, which will be reinforced and supported with this new policy, which goes into effect in January. Responsible data management and sharing has many benefits, including accelerating the pace of biomedical research, enabling validation of research results, and providing accessibility to high-value data sets. And we can see some of the policy requirements are listed here on this slide. We can also see on the right, there's a list of recommended elements of this data management and sharing plan, where there are very clear descriptions of the elements that must be included in the plan, as well as support provided by NIH in terms of understanding how to meet these requirements. So in addition to the things that are outlined here and in other locations related to the upcoming policy, there are a few additional expectations about sharing that I'd like to share with you here today. Sharing should be maximized, so and they do accommodate justifiable limitations for ethical, legal, or technical factors. Sharing should be responsibly implemented and consistent with existing laws, regulations, and policies. And finally, sharing should be prospectively planned for all stages of the research process. Libraries are already at work on this in tremendous ways, offering training, consultation support, systems, programming, services, a wide variety of things to support and empower best practices, data management, and sharing. While NIH encourages the use of domain-specific repositories for data sharing where possible, such repositories are not available for all data sets. When investigators cannot locate a repository for their discipline or for the type of data that they generate, a generalist repository can be a really useful place to share data. Generalist repositories accept data regardless of the data type, format, content, or disciplinary focus. Last year, the NIH Office of Data Science Strategy launched a new initiative called the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, or GREI, to make it easier to find and reuse NIH-funded data. GREI is intended to supplement the available domain-specific data repositories, enhancing the biomedical data ecosystem, and also help researchers find and share data from NIH-funded studies in generalist repositories. The generalist repositories involved in this specific effort are working together to establish consistent metadata, develop use cases for data sharing, to train and educate researchers on fair data and the importance of data sharing, and so much more. This initiative also aims to improve discoverability of data within and across participating generalist repositories, which will lead to greater reproducibility and reuse of data. So, the upcoming data management and sharing policy and good data practices in general are areas of priority for our Northwestern team. In addition to the work underway in our library, such as training, consultation support, programming, and services to support those good data practices, we're also working on our system infrastructure through investment in the Invenio RDM software open source community. CERN and Northwestern are core co-development partners on this software, and we are joined by a large and rapidly increasing list of partners who are adopting and contributing to Invenio RDM, which is a turnkey next generation solution for digital repositories. We are implementing Invenio RDM for Northwestern now, and similar efforts are underway at other institutions in the US and around the world. Likewise, CERN's Zenodo will soon be migrated to Invenio RDM, ensuring that Zenodo continues to lead the way with a resilient, scalable, and top-of-the-class user experience platform at the service of open science. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the what, but now let's consider the who. For any of this work to be effective, it needs to be carried out by really talented and dedicated individuals on our teams. And so we need to understand what those teams look like and the different people who help to make an effective team. To help support work in this area, we engaged on a collaborative persona project. In that project, which was a couple of years ago, we developed 14 one-page profiles of key roles in translational research. This was a highly evidence-based process through systematic review of the literature, harvesting of real job descriptions, and one-on-one interviews with individuals in those roles. Our 2 empathetic patient profiles were informed by the literature, and sample use cases were informed by CTSA project experience. Each one-page persona contains critical profile components such as major responsibilities and workplace environment expertise, software and data use at work, attitudes about technology, professional development goals, and more. We're currently expanding the collection with a few additional roles based on feedback and requests that we've received. And those expanded roles are shown in the box on the right. And we're updating the content for all of the personas to ensure that the personas reflect critical aspects of these roles. So in addition to understanding teams, it's essential to understand the roles that team members play in a project. And we can do that using contributor roles. The concept of contributor roles entered the mainstream thanks to something called CREDIT, which stands for the Contributor Role Taxonomy. This model is implemented in a wide variety of scholarly workflows, including to facilitate and enhance routine processes at publishers, funders, and more. We can see the 14 contributor role types on the right, and other schemas that have been developed by ourselves and other groups have explored augmenting credit with roles that many feel may be missing in today's scholarly ecosystem, including a role to reflect the important work that information professionals provide on projects. This speaks directly to an important domain in that earlier list, which is culture. So some of the most important work happening in research is not technological, but cultural. The reinvention of work to being less transactional and more transformational, as described by the Gaping Void team, who have designed many of the images in my slideshow today. We see a shift from checking things off a list to doing work for purpose and connection. It is critical to empower inclusive teams and really work to understand people and what matters to them. We're working hard to nurture technological and human systems in a variety of ways on our team. And one way that we're doing this is by taking our work on contributor roles and carefully focusing it through an ethical lens. So a few examples of that work are shown here, where we can see collaborative activities as well as a couple of upcoming outputs. We have an upcoming workshop with the NISO team on contributor roles to enhance community and capacity building. We have a scoping review of the literature of the ethics of contributor roles, which we're completing now. And we have another paper which is under review, which is looking at what it takes to evolve this domain to the next level. And so we're really excited and grateful for the comments that we know we'll get back through the review process and look forward to making that available soon. We've also taken a page out of our own playbook with personas. So we're thinking about each of these contributor roles in the context of what's necessary to empower them, much like we do in the personas. And so we're looking forward to that as well. And then finally, we have a Team Scientist Faculty Track project based on the Team Scientist Faculty Track at Northwestern. So all of this work is helping us better understand the work happening and the roles responsible and how to support and acknowledge the whole team, including our partners outside of the academy versus a select number of individuals who may show up on an author list for a paper. This also helps us understand how to apply this work successfully and ethically in technical and social systems. Culture change is an inside job. You cannot depend on anyone else to do it or for enough time to pass and for things to just get better on their own. Change is just as important as the investments in hardware, software, recruitment, security, et cetera. So, please understand that investment in culture change and developing and nurturing and empowering culture is absolutely worth it. So none of this would be possible without the outstanding team at Galter Library, as well as the support and enthusiasm from the Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine leadership. Feinberg is a special place, and it has been such a treat for our team to contribute to such a forward-looking vision. This work also depends on support and partnership with some of our key projects and collaborators listed here. I'd like to thank everyone for your time, and thanks again to the organizers for including me in this wonderful event.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kristi. We really enjoyed that presentation. That was fascinating material. You covered a real broad range of the whole spectrum of challenges we need to address here. So just a reminder to people to post your questions into the chat. Let me start off with a question about your characterization of not just data, information, knowledge, wisdom, but also you added in insight and impact. It would be nice to think that we had a linear relationship, that we collect data, we get knowledge from it, we become wise. But then later you spoke about culture. Can you say something about how the interplay between that data to impact pathway and the culture which you described in the later part of your presentation?
Sure, thank you. And thanks for a great question. So this is actually an opportunity for, I think, for us to reflect on that idea of technology and culture and how they need to come together to work efficiently to be able to take an idea or information and actually leverage that to move care into a better place, to be able to improve the things that are happening in our communities and so on. And so that's one thing that we've really seen. You know, you can have all of the technological components or the data components in place. And if you don't have those meaningful relationships to be able to communicate this information, to be able to bring people in together for meaningful partnerships, it just won't matter. So they definitely work hand in hand.
Mm. And related to that, certainly in research funding in the UK, we're often asked to write the pathway to impact. That at the point of justifying the research in the proposal, you're not just saying, well, this is an interesting question, we don't know the answer to this question. You're asked to outline what is the pathway by which this achieves meaningful impact. Do you have a similar thing with US funding, and do you think that's how effective is that, do you think, in actually realizing that impact?
Sure. So I think the work that's been happening in the UK and in other parts of the world where there is this very proactive step in thinking about that translation activity to be able to get knowledge into, to be able to reach those goals that are outlined in the proposal. You know, in a way, it's been a really wonderful opportunity for us to be able to think about the steps that are required for knowledge translation in a very discrete way. I will say that while we don't have the same kinds of routine, kind of broad structures necessarily in the United States, I will say that they've been, being able to look at what's happening elsewhere has helped us to be able to support the work happening on our campus and elsewhere as people are thinking about, like, okay, what's my project? And then how am I going to actually accomplish it? And then make sure that it gets out to people who can use it. And so we've learned a lot by reading the literature, by paying attention to what other groups are doing. And, we have a terrific team in the library who are also helping to guide those conversations as they're happening in real time, as people are developing their proposals. And then, once if one is fortunate to be funded, then it takes the conversation to the next level, which is always a lot of fun.
Mm. And I think it does help, focus the mind if you're thinking about impact right at the beginning rather than something downstream. So let's turn to an audience question now. So it's phrased this way: so much healthcare data are of questionable accuracy and value. So can you say something about the crucial importance of data quality?
Sure. My thoughts immediately turn to the value of being able to make information, those data sets, openly available. And I recognize that not necessarily, we're not necessarily going to be able to make everything completely openly available. But I think being able to have access to the different components of a study, so methodology, those instruments, being able to have some pathway to be able to access data, all of that really helps us to be able to take a step back and consider work that has already been done. It supports reproducible workflows, reproducible science that can then go on to support additional work. It also, I think, is a great opportunity, just reflecting a bit on the social or cultural aspect of our earlier comments. It's a great opportunity to be able to build community and local capacity in other settings. And so when you have those conversations about a study or a data set or something like that, talk to the people who developed the work, and those conversations between people who want to then subsequently use those data sets. You have common interests, common goals, and it's a great opportunity to build collaboration for the future.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. And I think perhaps there's something about the virtuous cycle that if the creators of that data, clinicians or whoever, or the patients themselves at the front end, are seeing the benefits of correct and good data, that incentivizes continuing to improve that and get that better, doesn't it?
Right. Well, and I think, on that point, it's really important that that we ourselves are good partners. So much of what we do depends on relationships either elsewhere on campus or with our communities. And so being able to have some level of accountability where we can show, we're hearing you. We want to reflect the values and the priorities of the community and how we're thinking about our work. And we want to make sure that you have access to that work, in a way that isn't necessarily, under lock and key, so that the people from the community that are participating in it don't have access to think about it and use it in other ways.
Yeah. And I'd like to come back to what you said about workforce development, because there are so many kind of interdisciplinary skills that you were describing in that presentation. Do you think that the current educational offerings that are available are good enough? Do you think there are gaps that we need to fill in terms of basic education for initial professional qualification, continuing professional development, certification? Where do you think we need to be going here?
Sure. That's a great question. So I really believe that this is going to be an ongoing challenge. So we're never going to get to a place where we know that we have everything we need. And, as technology continues to evolve, we're ourselves finding here on our campus that there are opportunities to refine, to improve processes, and to be able to help people be able to plug into some of these new technologies. So one example of that is a great project that was led by Matt Carson, who is here at Galter Library, and it's a partnership with our enterprise data warehouse. And it was really born from the idea of, we have individuals who are in the clinical environment, they're treating patients, but they may not necessarily be as familiar on a day-to-day basis with the kind of queries that need to be constructed to ask a question with the enterprise data warehouse data. Likewise, we have our data analysts, the terrific team at our EDW. The data analysts are keen to do a good job, but they don't have that clinical training that may help them be able to refine their queries. And so one thing that we found to be a terrific sweet spot in terms of supporting those connections and being able to support folks taking it to the next level is getting into that space between the data analysts and the clinicians, being able to develop education and training materials so that you can help to foster those connections and help people work better together as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a theme I see recurring again and again in this multi-stakeholder environment, is the interdisciplinary working, the multi-stakeholder working, that you can't have clinicians give you a set of requirements, you throw them over the wall to the data analysts who then don't really understand what they're doing. But this has to be a collaborative process, doesn't it?
Yep, definitely.
Coming back to the point you made, no, but hold that thought for a moment. Let's take someone else's question. So the question that's been posed here is about helping the public understand what we're talking about in computable biomedical knowledge. So from a library perspective, what do we need to do to make computable biomedical knowledge understood by and available to the public. So whether that's computable guidelines, machine learning models, whatever particular kind of knowledge object it is, how do we get this understanding? How do we get the availability from a library perspective?
Sure. So, I mean, I think this is an area where there's quite a bit of work happening right now as people are beginning to think about, certainly the advancements in the field, but also thinking about the role that libraries play in supporting access to information and knowledge by the public. One thing that we've seen a tremendous amount of work around, and this has been the case for a very long time, is the role that libraries play in addressing issues related to misinformation. And so that itself, I think, is an important area where libraries can really, kind of pick up an incredible, not just an incredible area of service to the community, but I think an incredible way to make progress and help to support trust in dialogue more generally. As far as the computable aspects of the work that's happening, I think one of the, I guess, the most immediate things that I see is the work that's being done to support open science processes. So making sure that people have access not just to the data, but to the tools and the workflows and the assessment tools to be able to understand the work that's happened and that they can have access to that so that we don't have our walled garden of what's happening in academia. But I think it really does come down to those trusted relationships with the community, looking for those opportunities to actually meet the community where they are. We've got a project that our library collaborates on with Dr. Melissa Simon, who directs the Center for Health Equity Transformation here at Northwestern. And it's a partnership with the Chicago Public Library and the Chicago Department of Public Health and other medical libraries in Chicago. And it's been really such a wonderful project because it's helped us to forge meaningful, trusted relationships. We're actually able to go out into the branch libraries, meeting the public where they are, answering questions about research and so on. So, I think it's probably at the end of the day, again, going to be a combination of, what we can do from a technical standpoint, but also developing those meaningful relationships, trusted relationships with each other.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we've got time just to take one more question that's come in. Bit of a challenge and not a great deal of time to answer it, but let me read it out to you. So your emphasis on reproducible workflow and cultural change is important, but it's important as well to distinguish reproducible workflow from replicable scientific methods necessary for replicable research results. These two constructs are complementary but different. Comments, please.
Yes.
So a snapshot answer.
Snapshot answer. So I completely agree with that. And I think, what I would encourage us all to do is to think about the importance of openness in general. So openness to be able to access not just those workflows, but to be able to look in a discerning way at the results of that work and to be able to continue to test it and reflect upon it. So I know that this isn't, this might be something that is an extended conversation, but I appreciate the question and would just encourage us to think and support open workflows more broadly.
That's great. Thank you very much. So again, let me thank you, Kristi, for an excellent keynote presentation and thank our audience for their great questions.